in our religious observance at home with ecclesial complacency. But wasn't everyone? I was the youngest of 4 children, much younger than my 2 older brothers and sisters. They were all in high school when I was growing up. But I was pretty fidgety in grade school and perpetually at odds with one nun after another. You know, the rulers and the whole thing. I never could find the right place or keep my mouth shut or see the board. I suspect I was probably considered too babied or pampered by an indulgent family at home by the Adrian Dominican Sisters of St. Rita Grammar School. All of that dramatically changed when I was a student at Maria High School and came under the influence of the Sister Henrietta, the wise nun, a bright, kindly pragmatist of a nun who recognized in my inattentiveness and disorder something she had seen before. Perhaps she needs glasses, was her assessment of me. Everything did change after that. My improved vision put me on the right page, figuratively and literally. Sister Henrietta had engineered a powerful turnaround in my life. And later, it was she who steered me in what would become the direction of my life. But I am not sure either of us had a clear picture of that then. When the time came for me to consider life after high school, even eyeglasses were not making the future look very clear. Sister Henrietta knew of my love for 2 special things: children and sports. Her advice to me: why not merge the 2? She was a great believer in doing what the heart said. She was a big listener to the voice within. Don't listen with your ears, she'd say, listen with your heart. And that's always good advice. Whatever God did with me then and later in working with young children, especially in the Special Olympics, I always acknowledge the unique influence of Sister Henrietta, without whom none of it would have ever happened. She remains perhaps the finest experience of the church in its most loving and caring ways. The great writer Robert Louis Stevenson said, "Keep your fear to yourself, but share your courage with others." I believe the author of Kidnapped, Treasure Island, and The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde still has a lot to tell us. He certainly pointed me in the right direction, for I have come here to Cape Cod on this summer night, not to rattle on about my fears for the church, but rather to hopefully share my courage about it. That, for me, is where hope grows. I am not sure how to properly define the public square in my own life. When do you arrive at that destination? Does it come with success in the ballot box? Or does it come with a career in public service? Or is it merely a part of being a public person? What does being a public Catholic mean? Is this not something that has just recently evolved as moral absolutes for Catholics that began to cloud up and weak leaders sought someone to blame? The result of all this public square Catholic debate in some places, like our country, has been brutal. Personal attacks on lawmakers often come with threats of political opposition and proposed defeat. Does being a public Catholic mean some of us must be held to a more stringent accountability than the rest of the baptized? Who is a Catholic in the public square? The vice president? His mother? Every Catholic senator? What about every Catholic assistant U.S. attorney? What about my husband's precinct captains? What about the head of animal control back in Chicago? And who measures who is a public Catholic? All these questions are important to me because I am not sure when the gates to the public square opened for me. Perhaps it was my marriage, my admission to the bar, to the Court of Claims, the Illinois Appellate Court, or the Illinois Supreme Court. I am not sure when I officially became a Catholic in the public square. But when Francis Cardinal George, the Archbishop of Chicago, canceled an invitation to dinner at our home after the publication of Carrie Kennedy's recent book, Being Catholic Now, over my interview in which I expressed criticism of some non-truths he told me, I felt that I must have finally become one. 41 years ago, in July of 1968, as Father said, I was a young phys ed teacher in the Park District, thanks to Sister Henrietta, and helped to organize the first Special Olympics in Soldier Field, thanks to then Richard J. Daley. I had no understanding of being in the public square, not even when my mentor, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, asked me to go buy her a $10 swimming suit at Sears, with my own money, I might add. So she could get in the pool with the Special Olympic swimmers. Perhaps I should have seen the writing on the wall. But I just thought of myself as a young woman then, who loved to work with children. Even after marrying my husband Ed, who as a young lawyer and newly elected second-generation Democratic Chicago alderman, longest serving I might add, 40 years, did he live in a much more publicly Catholic environment than I was used to. But we never thought of it as public Catholicism then. Did you? For my family, the McGlones, Catholicism was really more simple than Ed's family. His father was a well-known Chicago alderman and rubbed elbows on a regular basis with prominent members of the clergy. I understood this much better when all the Monsignors showed up at our wedding. But I did cherish the Catholic simplicity in which I was raised. I still pray to hang on to my dad, George McGlone's type of nobility and courage. He was a well-known bartender in some of the great Chicago watering holes and was always in touch with real life. I think his sense of what was genuinely important has always stayed with me. It still helps me to stay grounded, even on the Supreme Court. But of course, as a contemporary Catholic, I know that over the past 40 years, many of us were thrilled by the great promise and hope of change and liberty that arrived with the profound experience of the Second Vatican Council. That hope was the catalyst for our coming to redefine ourselves as believers with a deepening understanding of what it means to be a disciple of Christ and a full participant in the life of the Church.